All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, the 360-degree view of student safety, connecting the driver's seat to the parent's phone, presented by Geotab. I'm Amanda Huggett, Executive Editor for School Bus Fleet, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I encourage you all to ask questions during the webinar at any point, and we'll try to address them all. If we don't get to yours, don't worry. You will be contacted by email with a response after this event. So I am joined by our speakers today. We have Craig Burnt, Business Segment Manager, People Transportation at Geotab, T. Tang, founder of Trekker, and Mike Owens, Head of Revenue Generation at Geotab Vitality. Thank you all for being here. Let's get started. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, and let's get the conversation going.
Sure, I guess we'll go in the same order you introduced us in. So my name's Craig Burnt. I've been at Geotab, actually just hit 10 years yesterday, so that was pretty exciting. Most of that time has been spent back and forth, all in the public sector, but back and forth between public works and now in student transportation for the last 3 or 4 years. I'm responsible for our entire passenger transportation business. T, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is T. Tang. I'm the founder of Trekker. My background is that I'm a former U.S. Marine, mostly in fintech, but also parents. I found Trekker when I put my son about 10 years onto school bus, and they never show back on that scheduled time. So as a parents, as a Marines, I just want to create a system that help parents and administrator and student get to know and where the bus at all time. So that's why I created Trekker. Go ahead, Mike.
Great.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Mike Owens. I lead the revenue generation team at Geotab Vitality. Previously, I was with Geotab for a little over 4 years, and so very excited to be a part of this discussion. Appreciate being able to join today.
Thanks, Mike. If we can go to that next slide, I'd appreciate it. All right. So we want to focus the discussion around some really important items, right? So we're focused on student safety, and everyone has a different view of that. Every job has a different, every job at the school district, the contractor, whichever it is, has a different view of that. Some folks look at the way the driver operates the vehicle, where the student is, various other items. So the first one's empowering the driver. So we want to make sure that we're not doing the traditional, drag the driver in the room and show them what they did wrong discussion, because for all of you out there, I'm sure driver shortages have been problematic, and the last thing we want to do is put off really good drivers with a bad experience. Let's put it that way. So I guess let's start there. T, how can you talk about how technology is not only retaining drivers but making them feel like they're a valuable part of the team?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that, Craig. So the driver, as they bus driver, they deal with multiple things as they driving the bus. You have kids screaming in the back, figured out what stop they're going to go to next. So the best way we're trying to do is give them the tool they needed to do their jobs better. So that's giving them better route information, which student they're supposed to pick up at that stops. So basically, the more information and the more data that you can give to the driver without really distracting them so that they can do their job better, that's one way that you can make improve the way that they do their job. So that's what we try to do here at with Trekker.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I see a lot are drivers that are thinking about leaving or, kind of come and go. They feel like they're not given tools that they need. So what are some of the tools that Trekker's providing to make letting the driver focus on operating the vehicle and not the operation, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so we try to make the process easy for the driver when they start a day. For example, with signing in, as soon as they sign in, they exactly know which route it's supposed to be driving for that day. And then they can do pre and post trip from there, from the tablet as well. When they start driving the route, if they knew or they are just completely off course, the route, the GPS will help guide them back turn by turn direction, will help them route back to their stop and to guide them where they need to go. The other piece that we try to help to do is when they get to a certain stop and then certain student that try to get on the bus where they not belong to that stop or they're not supposed to get off at that stop, we try to alert the driver to let them know that this is student that's not supposed to be getting on or getting off at this stop, so that the driver have more information and can decide what to do with these students, where before they just go in blind. So that's what we try to do here to help give this tool to the driver so that they can do their job better.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And Mike, on the coaching side, again, talking about keeping those good drivers with us and maybe, improving their capability. Geotab Vitality has been a really exciting in my part of Geotab's business, because we focus so much on passenger transportation, and I spend most of my time on school transportation. Can you talk about how Vitality is coaching without, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for, without chastising or without scolding?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I really love this part of it, because at Geotab Vitality, our brand is really, our mission statement is to empower drivers. And, we want to support them and help them to build better habits and stay motivated and really feel valued every day. And because when we think about the Geotab Vitality value prop, it's really about helping with drivers in the sustained behavior change. And so from that perspective, what they really mean is it's about bringing attentiveness and support to make the drivers feel valued. And so one of the things that we really focus on from that perspective is making sure that there is an engagement and to help drivers and fleets specifically with the recruitment and engagement of drivers. And so the way that Geotab Vitality does that is, we call it the carrot approach, and it's through incentivizing safe behaviors, because after all, especially in the school bus fleet, very valuable things that are being transported in our youth. And so want to make sure that the drivers feel valued as in their day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, it's funny, while you were talking, I pulled up my Geotab Vitality. I don't know if you guys can see that ring. I'm filling it up for the week. It's been really interesting to see the reaction of both drivers and transportation leaders to Vitality, because we all want to coach our drivers, right? Everybody wants to make sure the bad behavior or the dangerous behavior or the behavior that they may not even realize was problematic doesn't continue. But to be able to project a point system out to drivers, generally on their own device, right? Because they're able to get gift cards and all kinds of stuff like that. I have $10 waiting for me for my last 2 weeks of good driving, apparently. It's really impressive to see the relief on the face of transportation directors and driver managers and dispatchers when they realize, oh, I have this passive tool, non-confrontational tool. Because the last thing somebody who just got up at 3 a.m. to drive, as T mentioned, some loud and rowdy kids around town, possibly in the snow, possibly in the rain, right? It's got to be, it's got to be an absolute godsend not to have to then confront that driver with, hey, just wanted to let you know you ran 3 stop signs today, or you really slammed on the brakes pretty hard, and we were able to see that through our telematics platform. All those things are great, but you have to weigh them. I have found with Geotab's customers in this space, the information that we're providing them, the data and the insights that we're providing them are really important, but the next step wasn't there. How do we communicate to the driver those items, right? And that's really where Vitality to me makes so much sense, because we're able to tell the driver passively, reward them for good behavior, let them know, hey, you didn't earn points in this category today because you slammed on the brakes a bunch of times. And then, there's ways to look at that as well, right? Sometimes slamming on the brakes is good. It's not advisable to run over or get into a car accident to make my software happy. That's why Vitality is looking to add, video insights and things like that over the near future. But I've really been impressed with the way drivers receive it as well, because initially we thought drivers might see this as oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? As an imposition, right? Sort of like when we put tablets in vehicles at first, right? T. I mean, drivers said, "Oh, it's another thing I have to do. I've been doing this route since 1973," and that kind of thing. So, do you find that drivers are expecting and adopting that navigation technology at this point, T?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's what. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, that one was for T, Mike. I got to shift gears there.
Yeah, no problem. So what we find is that usually everything works well. It's not a problem, but really our system, like you mentioned earlier, is super helpful for them when there's something happen, when there's a kid that lost, or when they got a parents are calling in that say, hey, that's driver report that that driver was speeding down my street. And this is where once they get those reports, that's where those data come in very helpful, and that's what we're trying to explain to the driver. Look, there's a lot of work that to get this thing up and running, and it's nobody like change. It's extra work. You have him up going on during your daily tasks already, managing the bus and try to get to the stop. But once you have this up and running, it will help you in long term. But exactly if this kid's if you're new to the route and you're not going to remember all 60 or to 80 kids that you're transporting for that route. And if that kid's trying to get off the stop they're not supposed to, the tablet will help you with the sound and the visual to let you know that, hey, this kid's not supposed to get off here. Don't let him off, or just ask him about confirming about it. Or especially if there's like a construction happening on they can say they drive this route for 18 years, but what happened if there's a construction going on that street that day, and they have to detour to a different route, and then they just don't know how to get to the next stop. That's where our turn by turn will come really helpful. So just like everything, people don't like to change, but once you show them the benefit long terms, once you have everything up and running, you have more buy-in. And that's what we try to hope and strive for every day.
Love it. And Mike, sorry, what were you going to say? Because I kind of we kind of train wrecked you guys together there for a minute.
No, that's okay. I was just going to kind of pick up and echo your sentiment around the driver. Is the feedback that we've seen thus far is that the data shows us increased engagement the longer that folks that use Vitality, which isn't always the case, and it's because of the gamification aspect. And to your point around school bus drivers, is we want to provide a positive experience, right? And I think that's one of the things empowering the drivers is it's like providing some autonomy, giving them a goal to strive for. And so I think that's just one of the things that we've seen in the data is like one of our key kind of markers is engagement. And it's been a very pleasant surprise because the safety story is quite obvious, but the driver engagement component is something that continues to be really positive.
Yeah, one of the things that really surprised me was one other thing that surprised me was the number of drivers who talk openly about their score for the week. They seem to be sort of competing with each other. Hey, I've got I have 146 points right now for the week. I'm sure somebody out there's got more and would absolutely love to tell me about it. Right, out of my 490 that I need to get my gift card for the week. So super interesting stuff. So T, based on what you were saying there, I want to move on. And by the way, everybody out there sending questions, those of you who are watching, there's a questions tab. Go ahead and put in your questions. We've got a couple we'll get back to you in a minute, but please put yours in. If they're super on topic, we'll jump into them right away, or we'll go back. But T, as far as you mentioned sort of communicating about the status of the student, let's talk about assuring the parent, right? Because when we were kids, you got on a school bus, you left the house around 7, 8, whenever your school bus was coming. In some cases, even earlier. I did get on the school bus for high school around 7. And then you'd show back up at some point, right? There was no way to know what was going to happen. Well, that's, obviously that's a long time ago. That's 20 plus years ago for all of us. How has that changed? I mean, parents are expecting a completely different level of communication, T. So talk to me about that. What do parents expect, and what should they be asking their districts for?
Sure. Great question, buddy. Well, I mean, just like this day and age, right now, you can track a pizza, you can track an Uber. Most parents able to expect, you expect them to track where's the bus at and where did my kids get on and get off? Did they get off to safely at the right location? So the key is like that's like almost given for most parents now, because they're so used to using Uber and the Lyft and all these things. So these are technologies should be commoditized in 2025, but there's obviously it's still not there yet. There's still a lot of roadblocks to get this widely adopted. So this district that's still not there, and that's what we try to do, is make this super easy and frictionless for the district and the driver and all the district to get involved. The other piece that is, getting how to get this data to the parents in the most accurate way, right? So it's one thing that you have these data, but then make sure it's correct so that you get trust into the parents continue to using the system. And that's just rely to make sure that making it easy for, let's say, for example, when the bus is down and you have to use a spare bus, there's a quick way to make sure you change that out quickly so that the parents tracking the right bus, for example. And we try to do that with our system. We make it super easy on the portal for dispatcher to or maintain person to switch out quickly as well. Or if you using a tablet, the driver can just, hey, I'm driving this bus today instead of the other one. So all these things we try to do to make the data, there's trust into the data so that you get parents, not only they expect to getting these data, but they get accurate data. That's how you build trust into this kind of product.
Yeah, I would agree. And one of the things that we talk about, with our existing and new customers is upgrading that level of data, right? I mean, the data out is only as good as the data coming in. And I think we've found, both working together and independently, especially on the student side, that making sure that we have extremely granular data that parents expect is important. And that's kind of Geotab's secret sauce as far as tracking vehicles. We only report change, right? So the interval isn't fixed. It's when change happens, we report it. So the TIA system can pick that up and project it. But also adding additional items on, right? Making sure we're tagging lights and doors, and then taking it even further with Trekker. So not only do we know where the vehicle stopped, when it stopped, where it stopped, who was driving it, all that, but using a tablet-based ridership system to identify which students got on and off at each stop. And obviously only would be going in one direction at a time. Super important. But what's interesting, Mike, is I don't know that we have a ton of cases of doing this yet, but if I worked at a school district, I would want to be able to go to a school board meeting and talk about the new gamification platform that we talked about for safety. Are you starting to see, not necessarily exclusively in student transportation, but across the industry, folks talking about, safety as a selling point for their own solution? And that solution could be delivering kids. It could be delivering packages. Are you starting to see that on the other side of Vitality?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we talk about the trust component, like safe driving and, safe behaviors is a lifelong journey. Like we always kind of talk about when we look at fleets of drivers is, we want to provide everyone the opportunity to help be the best driver that they can be, and and that really comes from attentiveness. But one of the things to your point around the drivers is within the Vitality, there is like a drive status. And so that is one thing that we've seen and, biasly hope that continues to be towards driving like an industry standard, because the safety benefits from attentive driving and safer driving has a myriad of positive outcomes. But one of the things that we're hearing from drivers is it allows them to kind of stand out and to demonstrate their ability to be safe behind the wheel. And so within the Vitality, as an example, we have these different driver statuses. And so one of the things that we're looking to continue to promote and to work with customers is like, if that can be an incorporated thing when we think of drivers and as they're looking to engage with, in this case, the community, and provide transparency to school boards around who is driving the vehicles.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, to me, if there's a concern around safety, and there's 100% concern around safety. I mean, student transportation is a zero tolerance for any sort of safety incident, whether it's a collision or whatever it is, or even student behavior in some cases, which is a whole other animal we're not going to get into today necessarily. But as far as being able to communicate to the parents that, whether it's a contractor or the school district, school board, whatever the entity is, has taken the step to incentivize, not just let drivers know they're doing something they shouldn't be, but to reward them in a reasonable way. It's not excessive or anything. But reward them for that good driving in a way that really mirrors the fitness tracker on your Apple Watch is just a tremendous way to mitigate the solution. What I'm not even sure I've talked to Mike about yet is a lot of our insurance partners here at Geotab are very interested in Vitality as a way to actually affect the cost and risk of insuring a fleet, right? If you've got a fleet of school buses that has a consistent problem, whether it's an inner city and they're hitting objects on a regular basis or whatever it is, there's generally a behavior component to that, right? There's other things you can do, but we're finding insurance companies love Vitality, which is interesting because that's kind of where Vitality started, right?
That's right.
With its history in the medical world, Vitality is that company that gives you $75 to get your blood work done, or a gift card to get your fitness tracker full, or whatever it is. In real life, we've translated that concept to, or I should say, Vitality has translated that concept to Geotab's driver behavior scoring, and it's been really impressive. But I would say that it's an incredible tool when parents say we've got to do something, or something should be done, or somebody should do something. Well, this is something you can do that's positive, right? It feels good. We don't lose drivers. We're not going to be with it. We're not going to fire a bunch of drivers for missing an arbitrary score and then, be short drivers and not be able to complete the runs and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really impressive to see. So from a parent's perspective, T, we kind of talked about the parent app, but what are some of the other challenges, that parents are having? Are we seeing as many latchkey kids as we used to when we were kids? That seemed like more of a thing in the 90s than it is now, but or the 80s, or whenever you were a kid. I don't want to guess. What other concerns do parents have outside of safety? I mean, obviously their number one concern is my child safe and where are they? But what other things are we talking to them about? Is it their schedule? Is it how are we also communicating with them?
Yeah, no, great question. For especially for parents with special needs kids, they need extra time in the morning, right? So they really need extra help, and that's where a lot of these the tool that we're trying to give for them is that now give them the flexibility in ability to choose how far they want to be notified. Some kids might need, I want to know 45 minutes before the kids arriving my school so that I can have enough time to prepare for my kids and stuff. So those, give the ability to give the control back to the parents, especially those parents in need. That's comes super handy. And then the other things that we trying to do for the parents as well is to give them control and the schedule. Like you mentioned, for example, if you're going to go on, you take your kids out of for a doctor visit, or you're going to go on vacation for like 2 days, we're working on give the ability for the parents to go ahead, or the student to go ahead and request those basically skip those pickup or drop off. So this go back to helping, because we take those data and then we feed that back into the daily route of the driver. So if you're not going to have kids that pick up on the stop, then fine, you can skip that stop altogether, and that's save, it's all those data combined together will allow you to save your operation much better, right? You don't have more dead stop, and parents just have better information and have more control in when the bus to come to pick them up, or when they not have to require to have pick up or drop off that for that day. So those are things that we try to do to make give more parents more control into what they with their transportation operation.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And the ability to notify the district not to pick my child up today because they're sick saves that sort of awkward phone call that everybody's trying to make right at 8:10 or whatever, if school starts at 8:30. So that's a fantastic item. I didn't even think to touch on that. But one thing I did want to touch on, you mentioned, parents of children with developmental disabilities that may have specific needs, IEP compliance, right? We didn't even touch on that yet, but making sure that a parent who's concerned, who has I think most of our audience is going to know what an IEP is, but an individual education plan, is going to give a child with any kind of special need the accommodations they need to be successful. And one of the ones we see often in student transportation is either temperature regulation or length of time. More importantly, length of time on bus. Geotab can help with both, but uniquely, Trekker can help you audit that, right? Make sure that we see how long they're on the bus. If I've got a 15-minute limit and my kid's 20 minutes away, we need to discuss with transportation right away how that can not happen tomorrow. All those things are so important because student success is, safety is number one, getting the kid there, happy, healthy, all that good stuff. And then obviously them being a successful student, the real reason that they're even getting to and from school is so important. So let's talk about those vehicles. So our third pillar that we wanted to discuss today, and again, we've got a couple of questions, but we're happy to take any more that you have around Geotab, around Vitality, around the industry, trends, really good stories from the Marine Corps, from T, any of that kind of stuff. Pillar 3 is optimizing the fleet, right? So this is where Geotab has traditionally excelled, right? Before we spent so many years recently building out our ecosystem, we've always been first and foremost a telematics company, right? So we tell you what your vehicle's doing, where it is, how it's being driven, all those good things. One of the trends that I'm seeing is the application of AI. And you knew you weren't going to get, for the audience, you knew you weren't going to get through a webinar without somebody saying AI. But ultimately, I would challenge you when you're working with whether I'm assuming it's going to be a software vendor of some kind or software paired with hardware that's going to be discussing AI. And I would challenge you to make sure that you're not so much hearing the term and that we're using AI. I would ask you to challenge that vendor and ask them how they're applying it. What is AI doing, right? Because AI can't create new data. It can't go find new information. It just doesn't make sense, right? It can do what 1,000 people couldn't do in a full day. So Geotab, one of the things, that Vitality applies on a regular basis is using AI to determine the likelihood of impact, right? That's our primary currency. So instead of telling you about all these incidents, we tell you this driver has this likelihood of having a collision, this driver has this likelihood of having a collision, and we can show you how that works. But it's incredible the way that affects fleet operations, right? So let's talk about the fleet. Mike, I'll start with you this time. One of the things that I think none of us expected was the reduction in fuel costs as a result of using Vitality, right? So we're encouraging people not to slam on the brakes, not to take off quickly, not to corner ridiculously, not to exceed the speed limit, all those kinds of things. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's sort of the underlying story of Vitality, one of the long-term benefits, right? So we stop the collisions, that's great, or we limit them, or we get safer. But let's talk about not spending money on that stuff and how you've seen that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point into your kind of how you opened this, is that this is Geotab bread and butter around all of the information and the operational as it comes to the vehicles. One of the areas that Geotab Vitality does is to help support that is through, as I mentioned, the behavior change element. So if you think about it at a very basic level, a driver who is being more attentive to driving is often has a smoother ride. So these are things like reducing fuel consumption, right? Reducing wear and tear on the vehicle. And so these are real, in addition to the safety, which we really kind of talked about, is a fleet manager's dream, in addition to, the parents of the children in this case, is one of the behaviors that we try and drive through the incentivization within Geotab Vitality is the mindfulness and the reduction of these harsh events, which you mentioned. And any harsh event that occurs on a vehicle, there's a downstream cost to that. And so it's really about helping the driver and positioning the driver to be part of the solution as it relates to kind of these different cost reduction efforts. And so I think that has been something that the data has been really proving out. As we mentioned, a lot of the primary focus of Geotab Vitality is in that collision risk, but the journey to get there is making a world and a fleet of better drivers, and there is the multitude of downstream positive impacts that translate into real cost savings for fleet operators.
Excellent. And then T, same question to you. I mean, talk to me about how Trekker is, reducing the number of miles folks are driving, improving the way vehicles are driven, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's great that you brought this point about AI, because at Trekker, that's what we are actively working on, and see how we can use AI to really make the product and the school district be more efficient, right? And one of the big piece that we focusing on at the moment is the routing optimization. So there's a lot of route planning there's a thought in the district is that they do the route planning at the beginning of the school year, but they don't really touch it until the next school year. So there's a lot of change happening between in 9 months of school. There's plans versus actual. So, and this is where for a district that less than 50 route, sure, you can go to and review that manually. But like for district that have 100 or more, or do multiple tiers, this is where AI will come really beneficial. So we use the AI to basically take the data that the driver driven. After a few days, we can basically come back and look, we saw you did this, this is your actual driving, and the system will automatically come back with some recommendation on how you can do the same route, but different way to get to it. And,
makes total sense.
Our tests so far show at least a minimum. Yeah, it's show minimum reduction of 10 to 25% easily, especially. So that's when we're really looking forward to getting all these features released soon, so that, because just during, especially with the driver shortage that most district dealing with, just having ability to go to and review all your actual driving and remove this dead stop, making your route more efficient. For example, this is just minimum we can reduce 10%, and that's just for a fleet. Think about having 100 bus or 100 driver. Now you have to just take a lot of that resource off dealing with the shortage, and then especially with the fuel, and then when it comes to fuel, then you have to deal with the climate. That's really going to help the environment as well. So that's what we are extensively using here at Trekker, and we're looking forward to really roll out a lot of these product that we are really leveraging on the AI to be able to do this in massive scale.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think one of the other things that Geotab is leveraging AI for is evaluating video. And our new Go Focus platform adds context, right? So if, for example, Vitality is showing somebody having a lot of harsh braking incidents, and we need to have a discussion with, that would actually come from Geotab translated to Vitality. And a driver comes back and says, hey, I need to do this. I've got a lot of deer in my early morning runs. Unfortunately, they're jumping out, they're jumping out this way, or I'm driving through dangerous areas. One of the things that we're actually doing going forward for a lot of routing engines is providing them information about dangerous intersections. There's 5.5 million Geotab vehicles running around. More than 4 million of those are in North America. They have collisions, they speed, they have their own driver safety incidents. We can see what's happening in intersections. So our Geotab Altitude platform allows both routing engines and individual districts to look at where to avoid. Right, it's a really important item that we can jump on another time. But as far as AI goes, one of the things that's also come to the forefront lately is predictive maintenance. So there's several engines out there, Norgon, Uptake, whatever it is. We all talk about preventative maintenance, change the oil, rotate the tires, et cetera, on the schedule from the manufacturer. But predictive maintenance in the school bus fleet is just absolutely fantastic, because what's the average age of a school bus? 20, they last 20 years, 15 years, depending on how much salt was put on the road in that neighborhood, but whether they rust out or not. But really, really impressive to see how much maintenance we can predict. But with that, we've got a bunch of questions rolling in. So Amanda, do you want to jump in here and figure out which ones we want to start with?
Yes, I sure do. So let's start with this one. The title of your webinar promises a 360-degree view. So what are the critical consequences when a district who relies on those more fragmented or piecemeal solutions, how does a unified platform bridge those gaps from vehicle to the director's desk?
Interesting. So that's actually the primary task, right? School buses are not without technology today, but they're very disparate systems. Anybody on here who's a transportation director has probably spent a lot of time logging in and out of different systems, right? So being able to integrate data from one end to the other is super important. And what does that mean, right? That's a term that software people like to use. What that means is that the student's data and driver data needs to have a journey through all those systems throughout the day. So starting in the student information system, where all of the social information, grades, all that stuff is captured, but where the route starts, right? I go to mom's house this day, dad's house that day, that kind of stuff. Then that route gets built, travels through Trekker, right? The student gets checked into their bus, the parent gets communicated with, that attendance taken on the bus goes back to the student information system and tells it, hey, child A got on the bus but never made it to class. Just find those exceptions, right? Ultimately, we need to find exceptions. So child A got on the bus but never made it to class. I was guilty of that a few times in high school. And then child B got to class without ever making it on the bus. Maybe mom got a new job across the street from the school, and it's easier to just drive the child in than wait for the bus stop, right? And those patterns can be recognized. And I think that's what T was getting at earlier. But today, a lot of video systems, a lot of transportation directors are going to have a separate video system, telematics system, routing system. Those two are the most likely to be integrated, but possibly a totally disparate student attendance system. So it's really painful, right? It's a lot of time and energy that gets wasted in those situations. So it makes the most sense to me to find solutions, and the way that I've designed Geotab's ecosystem around student transportation is to make sure that there's as few clicks and logins as possible to follow that student information journey. I picked them up, they went to school all day, dropped them off, and everyone was aware of where they were the whole time, and everyone got home safely because the vehicle was driven well. One of the ways we're expanding that is via APIs for Vitality, right, Mike? So if you want to talk about how we can project the information to a driver and other platforms about their driving, about their rewards in more real time.
Yeah, I think that's a really key part, at least from the Vitality angle, is because so much work has been done to leverage the very powerful and quality data within the Geotab Safety Center. And it is used as a tool to kind of educate drivers, to help them improve their driving behavior. And I think without that kind of integration, that's where you can, Craig, to your point, you kind of see the breakdowns across systems, and then it loses the value without that kind of coordination. And I think that's something that, as we continue to evolve, you want to make sure that when the fleet manager and the driver, they are both reading from the same song sheet, as it were. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, we're getting a ton of requests. I was thrilled to see that you guys launched those APIs, because we're getting a ton of requests to integrate Vitality feedback into driver apps, and then obviously we wouldn't project that to the parent, but them knowing that it's there is so incredibly powerful. So Amanda, I think we're up for we've got some more up here.
We've got one from Mike here. So when we're looking at Geotab Vitality, beyond just basic monitoring, how does in-cab coaching and those incentive systems that you've mentioned shift the culture from being reactive to proactive incident prevention?
Good question.
Okay, that's a really good question. And I think it kind of speaks to the why of Geotab Vitality a little bit, is broad statement, but traditionally, when we look at different safety or coaching or rewards program, they are reactive in the sense that an event happens or a month occurs. We collect the data on what happens, and then after the fact, someone goes and looks at it. And a lot of the times, especially when it relates to safety, we kind of filter and say, who is the quote unquote riskiest or most unsafe driver? We then go to that person. Usually it's a conversation. Sometimes there is a coaching plan or a video. And then what that does is it provides some limited and short-term change, but it doesn't really provide the sustained behavior change. And so the goal of Geotab Vitality is really providing a proactive measure, so to reduce the kind of downstream incidents. And so one of the ways or the main way that we do that, in addition from like in-app nudges and coaching, is to provide, we talk about this very much as a carrot approach. And so it's positive behavior change through incentivization and reward. And the way that it does is it organically changes it to a proactive and a preventative nature for the driver. And so it reduces, in addition to all of the positive safety benefit, one of the things that we found is it really reduces the friction between the driver and the fleet manager. Because one, you're not having to have those like, hey, come here, let's talk about this. But they are part, as I mentioned before, of the solution. And so it really, strengthens the relationship between, fleet operator and the driver.
Yeah. So let me ask you to elaborate a little on how exactly that system works, because you've talked a lot about incentivizing safe behaviors, and let's see, Craig, you mentioned that there are, gift cards you can earn and a scoring system, but how exactly are those accrued, and is that customizable for each user or district, or is it kind of worked into the system itself?
Yeah, really good question. So Craig's showing his right now. So essentially the way that it is personalized for the driver. So each driver gets a weekly personalized goal. And so again, this is where the integration, back to the previous point with Geotab, is so important, because it uses Geotab's PCR benchmarking, which does the risk benchmarking by vehicle type, vocation, and area risk, which is super important, because when we think of the risk profile for a school bus, very different than someone who's doing long haul trucking or last mile delivery, right? And so that is a key component on why the personalization matters. And so each week a driver is given a weekly goal, and they have the ability to earn points against that goal daily. And so the current, for those who are unaware, in the key safety incidents within the PCR scoring is speeding, acceleration, cornering, and braking. And so through safe driving measures, drivers earn points each week. And if they close the ring that kind of Greg just showed there, they have the ability to earn rewards. And those rewards go into the rewards wallet, which is like a digital wallet for drivers. And one of the things that is unique about Geotab Vitality is the rewards mall, if you will, is built into the application. So drivers have the ability to either redeem every week for which they earn, or they can accumulate a balance for something else within the rewards mall. So me personally, I have 3 young kids. I live in Canada. So anytime I end a reward, it usually just gets redeemed for Tim Hortons, and I take my kids to go get donuts. But it aligns to the theme of empowering the drivers. And so the onus is on the drivers to proactively change their behavior and to drive better. And so they have the autonomy and the authority around how they want to leverage those rewards within the application.
Perfect. Thank you. So one for probably Craig and T here, but how is the student data privacy protected? And are there any risks to families' personal data?
Great question. So I will say, just on the Geotab side, the first thing we do is we limit, and then I'll kick over to you, T. We limit the amount of information we collect. That's the number one rule for us, in that if it's not collected, it can't be lost. But Geotab is actually we have contracts with just about every federal agency you've ever heard of. Lupe, I believe you're actually in New York City. We're in all of your school buses as well. But our security standards are second to none. We're FedRAMP certified. Our devices themselves are extremely secure. FIPS 140-3 certification, which is brand new. So that's how we secure. Not only that, but our cloud architecture is extremely secure to meet those federal standards. All 5 branches of the U.S. military's non-combat vehicles are tracked by Geotab to some extent. So some incomplete deployments. But ultimately, though, security starts with the amount of data that you collect. And when we work with Trekker, right, which is our a solution that we offer on our Order Now platform, one of the things that attracted me to Trekker as a part of our ecosystem was T's background in fintech. What's more secure than your bank's website, right? So let me start there, and T, if you can comment on how in the vehicle and through the Trekker system we secure student data. That's so important.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Craig. Great question. Yeah, this is something I take very seriously because, obviously I wouldn't want my kids' data. I'm a parent myself, and I wouldn't want my kids' data to be exposed. So we took great care of this data. We start with, by Greg mentioned, is that we only collect or we only store the data we actually need. We don't take more than we need. So we get a lot of data from the SIS system. But for Trekker to work, for example, the few piece, the student information, we only store their name, right? The name that we store, we don't store the actual home address, for example. We only store the stop address. So this way, if there's some, exposed of data, anything potentially happen, you don't have personal information of the kids. The other piece that we try to do, for example, people concerned about is that, do you actually track the kids? We don't. We track the actual GPS of the bus itself. And that, mm-hmm. And all this data, even the data that we collect, is transmit encrypted, and it's the database that we store it on. We run it on AWS. So most of you probably heard that Amazon, and we actually encrypt the data at rest as well. So we take great care all this happen, and then especially on the tablet itself, when the bus driver sign in, make sure they have the right credential to pull in the route information. And all this data don't store on the tablet locally. It's only for during that time. And the moment the route is done, we basically wipe all this data clean so that in case, for example, the tablet gets stolen on a bus, they don't have access to this data. I took this very seriously when I designed the system, just because, obviously, like I mentioned, I wouldn't want my kids' information or my home address or information like that exposed out there. So this is something we take very seriously, and we actually follow up with all the compliance regulation as much as we can, and then go beyond what required us to do. We're trying to go through all the compliance process and get the certification in place so that when people want to look at what data and everything we collect, we not only collect it and do it safely, but we also follow all these compliance and certification that's put out there for us.
And Mike, that actually, I'm just going to follow up. Sorry, I'm going to jump in, Amanda, if that's okay. Because the other question, one of the things that we get asked about for drivers all the time is, if I'm going to have this app on my personal phone, what's it collecting about me? What information about me as a driver is Geotab Vitality collecting? And what risk is there as well? So we may as well go to the other side of the coin, right? What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a really good question. So on the Geotab Vitality side, it is all opt-in on the driver, and the information is actually pulled from the Geotab Safety Center. And so all the same kind of privacy protocols and the extent that we scrutinize and anonymize data that Craig went over with as regards to Geotab applies right through to Geotab Vitality, which is makes it really easy for customers.
Awesome. So how does leveraging the vehicle data for predictive maintenance move beyond just cost savings and ensure peak vehicle condition? And how does that contribute to student safety and fleet reliability?
That's a great question. So let's go back to AI for a second, because that's really what predictive maintenance is, right? It's, if you had unlimited time in humans, you would sit down and look at every aspect of every vehicle and try and figure out where it's going to fail next. Nobody has that kind of time or energy or ability or whatever you want to call it. So as far as predictive maintenance goes, what are we trying to get to? So in the same way in safety, we're trying to get to the likelihood of a collision, and that collision could be with an object, a person, another vehicle, whatever. In predictive maintenance, we're trying to really predict downtime. We all know that vehicles break. Everybody has a car. Everybody has to get their oil changed. Even if you have an EV, batteries degrade, tires go bad, brakes go bad. So we're really trying to get to downtime. So by predicting downtime, we can help remove the number or reduce the number of spare vehicles that a fleet has, right? Most school districts operate with 10 to 25%, depending on their situation, spares, because so many vehicles are out of service. Anything, I mean, we all on this call know what can knock a vehicle out of service: an expired fire extinguisher, a tire that's throwing a code for low pressure, even if it's just the sensor that's broken. Any of those kinds of things gets a vehicle off the road, and for all the right reasons, right? Nobody would want to find out there was a fire on their school bus and the fire extinguisher was expired. So by reducing the number of spares required, not only do we help save money, but we give drivers the confidence that they're going to be in the same bus. They get a sense of ownership. That's a huge item. And they can focus more on their individual vehicle. And then when we talk about the maintenance staff, again, same thing. They can take care of things proactively. If they get the message, hey, change the spark plug because you're about to have a cylinder 2 failure based on a series of codes that in the past in this type of engine has led to a misfire that will take your vehicle off the road, we can do it proactively and never have that misfire happen, never have that vehicle go down. That also improves the experience for parents, not only for drivers who don't get stuck, but for parents who don't have to wait. I've had it happen. You're standing there and all of a sudden your kid's bus hasn't left yet because they had to send a rescue bus to the school because on the ride home, something happened to that bus. So it improves everyone's experience by making sure the vehicle's up and running. Costs are lower because you're changing a spark plug, not a head gasket, that kind of stuff. What do we got next, Amanda?
Sorry, Bill forgot to unmute myself. So
I was wondering, I was like, is she miming? What are we doing?
Not that good, no. We've got about 8 minutes left here. So reminder to our viewers, if you have a question, to please put it in the chat right away. Otherwise, I've got one left in here already to ask you. And so that's when an administrator finally achieves this single source of truth, what are the top 1 to 2 most powerful data-driven decisions that they can make right now to immediately reduce the risk and improve powerful efficiency across their whole operation?
Great question. I'll take that one to start. I would say the number one thing is to eliminate overservice. This is actually I know that sounds crazy, right? What's overservicing? This is a kind of a holdover from my days in public works where we've all been through an intersection that's had a little too much salt put through it, right? And during a snowstorm where it's kind of crunchy in that intersection, the biggest cost to that city isn't that intersection being unsafe. It's actually that they're just dumping so much extra salt into it. The same thing for students. As soon as T alluded to earlier, we can figure out that a student's not going to get on the bus anymore this year. They've moved. Mom got a job across the street from the school, like I said. Their needs changed and they're attending a different school or whatever it is. That stop, we're driving a mile out of our way or even 3/4 of a mile out of our way to go stop at that house for 30 seconds every single day, whether they're there or not. That's a tremendous gain because even though it's only a 1/4 mile times 180 school days, 2 trips a day, and maybe there's 15 of those in each school, right? It all starts to add up very quickly, fuel mileage, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, T, what's another one that you can think of for an immediate return on investment?
Yeah, well, I brought this up earlier briefly, is that it's critical. Like you have all this data, but you have to make sure it's the right data, right? To go to the parents, for example. So if you, give example earlier, if a bus is down and you're using a spare bus, using your example earlier, that information, that spare bus information need to be updated and get that out there quickly to the parents so that they're not looking at the bus sitting on the bus yard. They're actually tracking a different bus going out there. So I guess have the most accurate data, but also have the right data sending to and send these notification out because that's how you earn trust into using the system. And when there's some bad things happen or some incident happen, you're able to get these data up quickly, the accurate data up quickly, so that you can make the right decision on what to do with this. Where did the kids actually get off? Like, if you have a kid loss at the end of the day, how can you pull this data up quickly so that you can decide where to send a party searcher, or find out that kids actually just went home with a friend instead of getting up that user stuff, for example.
Yeah. And T, you just mentioned, that word trust again. And so we do have a follow-up question from Lupe, who just came in about the security piece of this again. And so that's, let's see, asking, is all software PETS certified privacy enhanced technologies? And I have not heard of that term yet myself, so please enlighten us.
Yeah, this is something I definitely look into. But what we know is that what we are going to with Tracker is we go to a SOC 2 certification compliance itself. We're not required to do it, but we want to go to and get that certification stamp on our platform. Everything we start a process. We should have it all wrap up in the next few weeks or so, and then that's when. Anytime, besides we have, we already hosted on AWS, Amazon, so we have all those control point covered by Amazon already. But Tracker itself going to go to and get this certification. So then it just make it, when people are asking these kind of things, we're just going to hand over here. This is certified by a third party, and our system is not only we say it, but this is actually certified and compliant. So, but I'll look into more about. Thank you for the question. I'll look into this more. In the details, and then come back with a details answer by email, maybe.
Awesome.
Yeah, Lupe, I'm not familiar with that particular certification either. So we'll dig into it. We may be calling it something else, or one of our certifications likely satisfies that program. So we'll make sure we get back to you via email. But like I said, from a security perspective, the Geotab Vitality, Geotab, my Geotab platform, various others are all all meeting or exceeding federal standards for privacy.
Perfect. Michael, I want to ask you we haven't heard from you in just a moment. So is there any last thoughts that you have in our last 2 to 3 minutes together?
Yeah, I just kind of, the previous question before that around like the 1 to 2 kind of key takeaways is, I think, a little bit different perspective from the Geotab Vitality in terms of the value that's seen. But I think the outcome that we're driving towards is in the reduction of collisions, right? So all of the behavior change, the gamifications, the engagement, this is all towards supporting and the ability to reduce collisions, which is of the utmost importance when it comes to this. So didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversations, but I think that's just something when you have this orchestration and this holistic solution, that's just like an invaluable benefit.
Yeah, and just doing a little bit of quick digging, I think we can pretty confidently say that even though PET doesn't necessarily have a specific certification, the standards that we meet should meet and exceed that classification, Lupe. So if you have any questions, we'll shoot you an email. We can discuss that offline for sure. It's a great question, though.
Yeah, Awesome. Thank you all. So that is the time that we have for today. So for anyone who didn't ask a question, who might still have one, we can follow up with you via email to address all those. And we hope that all of you watching this enjoyed today's webinar. Thank you so much to our presenters, Craig,
Amanda, one more quick thing. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Just one more quick thing. If we have any existing Geotab customers on the call, we would invite them to try Geotab Vitality. I personally had a delicious Chipotle burrito at the expense of Michael and his team a couple days ago that I very much enjoyed, and I've got a Target gift card sitting there waiting for me right now. So if you're interested in that, certainly reach out to us. We would love to get a 60-day pilot for your team rocking and rolling. And if anyone wants to learn more about, and I'm sorry, you're saying this, Amanda, but Geotab or Tracker, obviously reach out to us as well. But we've got those Vitality test licenses ready to rock and roll. So just let us know.
Perfect. Very generous. Thank you so much for that. And this webinar will be cataloged on our website if you want to watch it back or share it with someone else that you know. It will be on schoolbusfleet.com/webinars. You can find that there. Let me just make sure. Perfect. All right. So I believe that's all we have for today. Thank you all again so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
Take
us,
care.
Amanda.